Zelensky after Easter truce, Ukrainian actions will mirror Russian moves. Czech Foreign Minister on Putin's ceasefire, like declaring a hunger strike while secretly eating sweets, and how Kremlin militarizes Russians for prolonged war in Europe. The latest news next. The Defense Ministry of Russia stated on Monday, the 21st of April, that Russian forces had resumed their war of aggression in Ukraine following the end of their so-called Easter truce. Reported by Russian Defense Ministry, Russian outlet Kommersant and other propaganda outlets. Quote, with the end of the truce, the armed forces of the Russian Federation resumed the conduct of the special military operation, the term Russians used to refer their war of aggression in Ukraine. About details, since the announcement of the so-called truce, Russian troops have repeatedly violated it. However, the Russian Defense Ministry claimed that Russian military personnel strictly observed the ceasefire and remained at previously occupied lines and positions. The ministry also alleged that Ukrainian defense forces had shelled Russian troops and launched drones. The Russians are lying, despite their claims that they never truly honored their so-called Easter truce. Russian forces continued their attacks throughout the period they labeled a ceasefire, violating it multiple times. Now, after pretending to be committed to peace, the Russian Defense Ministry falsely asserts that they strictly observed the truce, while blaming Ukraine for provocations. This is classic disinformation aimed at shifting responsibility and covering up their ongoing aggression. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has reported that Russia has not responded to Ukrainians' proposal for a complete ceasefire for 30 days after Easter, nor to the call to extend the silence in the sky regarding civilian infrastructure, reported by Zelensky on X. About details, Zelensky noted that the largest number of attacks and assault actions had been recorded on the Pokrovsk front, adding that Russia had not kept its promise of complete silence on the Kursk front either. He said a total of 96 Russian assault actions had occurred along the line of contact. The Russians fired 1,882 times on Ukrainian positions, 812 of which were from heavy weapons, and used FPV drones 950 times.
This day was not enough for Moscow to respond either to the proposal for a full 30-day ceasefire after Easter or to the proposal to at least extend the ceasefire in the sky, refraining from missile and drone strikes on civilian infrastructure. The nature of Ukraine's actions will remain symmetrical. Ceasefire will be met with ceasefire, and Russian strikes will be met with our own in defense. Actions always speak louder than words.
Czech Foreign Minister Jan Lipavsky has ridiculed Russia's so-called Easter ceasefire in Ukraine, likening it to someone declaring a hunger strike while secretly eating sweets. Reported by Lipavsky on CNN Prima News, as reported by European Pravda. The minister criticized Russia for violating the Easter ceasefire announced by Kremlin leader, dictator Vladimir Putin.
It's like declaring a hunger strike between breakfast and lunch while secretly eating sweets. We can see the shelling continues. Ukraine reports a number of attacks, so this kind of ceasefire is more of a media stunt than a reality.
Lipavsky also noted that Russia has refused to agree to the 30-day ceasefire already accepted by Ukraine. Putin never agreed to it and started making other demands. We must focus on reality, not on words, he said, adding that if Russia did not want the war, it would not have started it. The only chance now is for Ukraine to successfully defend itself so that Russia cannot achieve its goals through military means, the diplomat concluded. Russian troops attacked Ukraine on the night of the 20th to 21st of April using an Onyx anti-ship cruise missile, 2 Ha-31P anti-radiation missiles, as well as 96 Shahed attack drones and various types of decoy drones. 42 of the AVs did not reach their targets, reported by Ukrainian Air Force on Telegram.
As of 9 a.m., 42 Shahed attack UAVs and other types of drones have been confirmed downed in the east, north, south, and center of the country. 47 enemy decoy drones disappeared from radar without causing adverse effects.
The Russian attack affected Kharkiv, Dnipropetrovsk and Cherkasy regions. The Russians launched missiles from the airspace of the Black Sea and from temporarily occupied Crimea. The drone attacks were carried out from the Russian cities of Milerovo, Kursk, Bryansk and Primorsk-Akhtarsk, as well as from the village of Gvardiysky in temporarily occupied Crimea. The air attack was repelled by Ukrainian aircraft, anti-aircraft missile units, electronic warfare units and mobile fire groups of the Ukrainian Defense Forces. This is what the Kremlin calls a ceasefire. This is not a truce. It's yet another act of terror, another lie, another proof that any so-called truce declared by Putin is nothing but a propaganda move, a psychological operation aimed at manipulating public perception. A real ceasefire doesn't come with explosions, missiles and death. This is not peace. This is war under the mask of diplomacy. The Russian authorities are launching a large-scale propaganda campaign to convince the population of the necessity of a great war with NATO countries, according to the report from the Institute for the Study of War. The Russian authorities are promoting narratives aimed at further militarizing their society in the long term. As an example of this campaign, RSW referred to an interview with Russian state journalist Pavel Zarubin on Sunday, April 20th. He asked Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov to comment on the European Union's recommendation for European leaders and officials to refrain from attending the main 9th victory parade in Moscow. In response, Lavrov accused the Europe of inciting neo-Nazi ideology in Europe and stated that Russia will make every effort to ensure that this ideology does not raise its head and will destroy Nazism once and for all. RSW described such statements by the Russian Foreign Minister as part of a long-standing Kremlin information campaign that appeals to the Soviet Union's victory over Nazi Germany and the broader myth of the Great Patriotic War to tarnish Europe and NATO. These actions aim to amplify negative sentiments among Russians and mobilize support for the militarization of society in the long term.
The Kremlin has previously appealed to the mythos of the Great Patriotic War to persuade the Russian population that their increasing social and economic sacrifices for the Russian war effort in Ukraine can help achieve overwhelming victory.
The Institute also reminded that Russian dictator Vladimir Putin and other senior Kremlin officials regularly use the vague term denazification, referring to a change in power in Ukraine and the establishment of a pro-Russian puppet regime there. Analysts also recalled Putin's words, claiming that the Ukrainian government was allegedly controlled by Nazis as a justification for the full-scale invasion in February 2022.
The Kremlin is increasingly employing the same playbook that it used against Ukraine towards Finland and former Soviet states, including Estonia and Moldova, to justify its attempts to control independent countries and set informational conditions for possible future Russian aggression.
Russia prepares for war with NATO. According to German intelligence, the Kremlin is preparing for a large-scale war with NATO. The report from the agency states that dictator Vladimir Putin perceives relations with the West as a systematic conflict and is therefore ready to use force to achieve his goals. The president of Lithuania stated that his country has 4 to 5 years to prepare for Russian invasion. Lithuanian Foreign Minister Kęstutis Budrys said that Russia is a long-term military threat to NATO and the entire North Atlantic security. That's all for today. Thanks for watching this video. Like and